Rock-a-bye, baby on the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock.
Flight 447 to London was already an hour into the journey when the crying began. Not the usual fussy whimper of a tired child, but the heartbroken wails of a baby who simply could not be comforted. Sophia Bennett sat in seat 3A, trying to focus on her book, but finding it impossible to ignore the sound. She glanced across the aisle and saw a man in his mid-30s, wearing an expensive blue suit, holding a small baby against his shoulder. His face was a mask of exhaustion and something deeper. Desperation, perhaps? Or grief? The baby, no more than 8 months old, wore a tiny white outfit and had wisps of dark hair. Her face was red from crying, and despite the father's gentle bouncing and whispered words, nothing seemed to help. Sophia watched as a flight attendant approached with a bottle, which the man gratefully accepted. But the baby turned her head away, crying even harder. Other passengers were beginning to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Someone behind them sighed loudly. The man's shoulders sagged. Sophia could see his hands trembling slightly as he tried again to offer the bottle. This was not a man who didn't care. This was a man who was trying his absolute best and running out of options. Sophia had been a kindergarten teacher for 7 years before deciding to pursue her dream of becoming a children's book author. At 29, she had just finished meeting with publishers in New York about her first book. She knew children. More importantly, she understood that sometimes what a child needed most wasn't food or a toy. Sometimes they just needed comfort in a way they recognized. Without overthinking it, Sophia unbuckled her seatbelt and crossed the aisle. She knelt beside the man's seat, speaking softly so as not to startle him. "Excuse me?" she said gently. "I don't mean to intrude, but would you mind if I tried something?" The man looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. Up close, Sophia could see he was handsome despite his obvious exhaustion. But it was the grief etched into his features that caught her attention. This was a man carrying a heavy burden. "Please," he said, his voice hoarse. "Anything. She's been crying for 2 hours. I don't know what else to do. May I?" Sophia asked, holding out her arms. The man hesitated for only a moment before carefully transferring the baby to Sophia's arms. The little girl continued to cry, but Sophia settled her gently against her chest, cradling her head with one hand. And then Sophia began to sing. It was an old lullaby her grandmother had sung to her when she was small. The melody was simple, the words in a language half forgotten, but there was something timeless in it, something that spoke of safety and warmth and love that transcended words. "Hush now, little starlight. The moon is watching over. Close your eyes, sweet darling. Let dreams carry you home. The world can wait until morning. Tonight you're safe and warm. Hush now, little starlight. You're loved beyond all measure." Sophia's voice was soft and melodic, trained from years of singing to classrooms full of children. She swayed gently, keeping the rhythm of the lullaby steady and calm. The baby's cries began to quiet. Her little fists unclenched. By the second verse, she was hiccuping softly, her eyelids growing heavy. By the third, she had laid her head against Sophia's chest, her breathing evening out. When Sophia finished the song, the baby was asleep. The silence that followed felt like a small miracle. Sophia looked up to find the man staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Wonder, certainly, gratitude, but also something that looked like pain. "How did you do that?" he whispered. "Sometimes they just need a different voice," Sophia said softly. "Someone who isn't as worried. Babies can feel our stress." She carefully transferred the sleeping baby back to the man's arms. The little girl stirred but didn't wake, settling against her father's chest with a soft sigh. "Thank you," the man said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means. I've been trying for hours. I thought I was failing her." "You're not failing," Sophia said firmly but kindly. "Being a parent is hard, especially when you're traveling." Something flickered across the man's face at the word parent. "I'm her father. Just her father now." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Sophia's heart clenched with understanding. "I'm sorry," she said softly. The man nodded, looking down at his sleeping daughter. Her name is Isabel. She's 8 months old. Her mother, my wife, passed away 3 months ago. Complications from surgery that was supposed to be routine. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so sorry for your loss. I don't know what I'm doing, the man confessed quietly. I have nannies and helpers and everyone telling me how to do things. But none of them can do what you just did. None of them can make her feel safe the way her mother could. What's your name? Sophia asked gently. Alexander. Alexander Chase. Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly. Alexander Chase. Even she, who paid little attention to business news, recognized that name. Chase Global Enterprises. Hotels, real estate, technology. One of the wealthiest men in the country. And here he sat, lost and grieving, just a father trying to comfort his daughter. I'm Sophia, she said. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing better than you realize. You're here. You're trying. That's what matters. Are you traveling alone? Alexander asked, then quickly added, I'm sorry, that's too personal. I just meant, would you mind sitting with us for the rest of the flight? In case Isabel wakes up again. I can upgrade your seat if needed. Sophia glanced back at her empty seat across the aisle, then at this grieving father and his sleeping baby. I'd be happy to, she said. And no upgrade necessary. We're right across from each other anyway. She retrieved her book and settled into the seat beside Alexander. For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, both watching Isabel sleep peacefully. Then Alexander began to talk. Quietly, haltingly at first, then with more ease. He told Sophia about his wife, Catherine, who had been a pediatric surgeon. How they had met at a charity gala, and she had challenged him on how his company could do more for children's hospitals. How she had been brilliant and kind and had wanted nothing more than to be a mother. She only got 8 months with Isabel, Alexander said, his voice breaking. 8 months. And now I have to figure out how to raise our daughter without her. How to be enough for Isabel when Catherine was everything? Sophia listened, offering no platitudes or empty reassurances. She had learned long ago that sometimes people just needed to be heard. Can I tell you something I learned from teaching? Sophia said after a while. Children don't need perfection. They need presence. They need to know that someone shows up for them every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. You're doing that, Alexander. You're showing up. I had a business meeting in New York, Alexander admitted. Everyone told me to leave Isabel with the nanny, but I couldn't. I can't bear to be away from her, even though I have no idea what I'm doing. Does that make me selfish? Dragging her across the country because I can't stand to leave her? That makes you a father who loves his daughter, Sophia said firmly. That makes you someone who's choosing her over convenience. That's not selfish. That's love. Alexander looked at Sophia with something like hope in his eyes. How do you know so much about children? I was a teacher, Sophia explained. I worked with 5- and 6-year-olds for 7 years. You learn pretty quickly that children are resilient, but they need consistency and love more than anything else. And I grew up watching my mother raise my 3 younger siblings mostly on her own after my father left. She taught me that showing up is half the battle. They talked for the next hour as Isabel slept. Alexander told Sophia about the pressures of running a company while grieving, of trying to be strong for everyone while falling apart inside. Sophia shared stories from her classroom, funny moments and touching ones that made Alexander smile for the first time since she had met him. When Isabel woke again, Sophia was ready. She sang softly, the same lullaby, and the baby watched her with wide, curious eyes instead of crying. Eventually, Isabel even smiled, reaching out a tiny hand toward Sophia's face. She likes you, Alexander said, and there was wonder in his voice. She doesn't warm up to strangers? She's been inconsolable around anyone except me and her regular nanny. Maybe she just knows a friendly voice when she hears one, Sophia said, making funny faces at Isabel, who giggled. As the plane began its descent into London, Alexander turned to Sophia with an expression of determination. I know this is going to sound strange, he said. We've only just met. But you have a gift with Isabel. More than that, you understand what I'm going through in a way no one else has. I'm going to be in London for a week for business meetings I can't cancel. Would you consider helping me with Isabel? I'll pay you whatever you ask. I'll put you in the best hotel. I just need someone who can help me figure out how to be a better father. Sophia's first instinct was to say no. This was absurd. She didn't know this man. She had her own plans in London, meetings with publishers, things to do. But then she looked at Isabel, now content and playing with Sophia's fingers. She looked at Alexander, this grieving father trying so hard to do right by his daughter, and she thought about how sometimes opportunities come to us in the strangest ways, asking us to be brave enough to say yes to something unexpected. "I'm not a nanny," Sophia said carefully, "and I won't take your money. But I do have some time in London. If you'd like company, someone to talk to and help with Isabel occasionally, I could do that. As a friend." "A friend," Alexander repeated as if testing the word. "I would like that very much." The week that followed was nothing like Sophia had planned. She met Alexander and Isabel each day, sometimes in parks where they pushed Isabel in a swing, sometimes in quiet cafes where Sophia taught Alexander games to play with his daughter. She showed him how to read Isabel's cues, how to make her laugh, how to comfort her without panic. But more than that, they talked. About loss and grief and moving forward. About Catherine and the life Alexander was trying to build without her. About Sophia's dreams of writing children's books and why she had left teaching. "You should write a book about lullabies," Alexander said one afternoon as they watched Isabel nap in her stroller. "About how songs can heal and comfort. You could include that lullaby you sang on the plane." "Maybe I will," Sophia said thoughtfully. On their last evening in London, Alexander invited Sophia to dinner. His business meetings were done, and he would fly back to New York the next day. They sat in a quiet restaurant, Isabel sleeping peacefully in a carrier beside the table, and Alexander reached across and took Sophia's hand. "This week has changed everything," he said quietly. "You've shown me that I don't have to do this alone, that accepting help isn't weakness. You've given me hope that Isabel and I are going to be okay." Sophia squeezed his hand. "You were always going to be okay. You just needed to believe it." "I don't want this to end," Alexander said. "I don't want to say goodbye and go back to struggling alone. I know it's too soon. I know I'm probably crazy for even thinking this. But I need you in my life, Sophia. Isabel needs you, not as an employee, as someone who matters." Sophia's heart was pounding. She had felt it too, this connection that had formed over lullabies and late-night conversations. This sense that she had found something precious and rare. "I live in New York too," she said softly. "We don't have to say goodbye. We can take this slowly, be friends, let Isabel get to know me properly, and see where life takes us." Alexander's smile was the first truly happy expression Sophia had seen from him. "I would like that very much." 6 months later, Sophia's first children's book was published. It was called The Lullaby Book, and it was dedicated to Isabel and Catherine. Alexander was there at the book launch, Isabel on his hip, clapping her little hands as Sophia read to a room full of children. That evening, as they walked through the park where they had spent so many afternoons together, Alexander stopped and turned to Sophia. "I need to tell you something," he said. "I've been thinking about when we met on that plane. I was at my lowest point. I felt like I was drowning. And then you crossed the aisle and sang to my daughter, and it was like someone threw me a lifeline." He paused, looking down at Isabel, who was reaching for falling leaves. "Catherine made me promise something before she died. She made me promise that I wouldn't shut down, that I would let people in, that I would let Isabel grow up in a home filled with love, not just grief." His eyes met Sophia's. "I think she would have loved you. I think she would be grateful that you found us." Sophia felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "I think I was meant to be on that plane. I think some things happen exactly when they're supposed to." Alexander shifted Isabel to one arm and took Sophia's hand with the other. "I love you," he said simply. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the moment you sang that lullaby. Maybe it was when you made Isabel laugh for the first time since Catherine died. Maybe it was every conversation we've had since. But I love you, and I want you in our lives. Not as a helper or a friend, but as family." Sophia looked at this man who had learned to grieve and love at the same time. At little Isabel, who now reached for Sophia every time she saw her. At the life that had unexpectedly bloomed from a simple act of kindness on an airplane. "I love you too," she said. "Both of you." Isabel chose that moment to laugh and clap her hands as if she understood and approved. 1 year later, they returned to the same park for Isabel's second birthday. It was a small celebration with close friends and family. As Sophia watched Alexander play with Isabel, she marveled at how much had changed. How a grieving, desperate father had become confident and whole again. How a crying baby had become a joyful toddler. And it had all started with a lullaby. Sometimes life asks us to be brave in small ways, to cross an aisle, to offer help to a stranger, to sing when our first instinct might be to look away and mind our own business. Sometimes those small acts of courage change everything. They connect us to people we were meant to meet. They lead us to love we never expected to find. Alexander had been a billionaire who thought he could solve every problem with money and resources. He had learned that some things cannot be bought. Comfort comes from authentic care. Healing comes from genuine connection. And family is not always the one we're born with, but sometimes the one we choose and build together. Sophia had been a young woman chasing her dreams, thinking her path was set. She had learned that the best adventures are the ones we never planned, that sometimes helping someone else is what leads us to our own happiness. And Isabel, who would grow up hearing the story of how her father met the woman who would become her mother, would learn the most important lesson of all, that love is not diminished by loss, that a heart can hold grief and joy at the same time, that families come in all forms, and they are built on the foundation of people who choose to show up for each other. Every single day, years from now, when Isabel would have children of her own, Sophia would teach her the same lullaby she had sung on that airplane, and the tradition would continue, passed down through generations. A song about safety and love and the truth that we are never truly alone when we allow others to care for us, because that's what Sophia's grandmother had taught her, what her mother had demonstrated. What she had passed on to Alexander and Isabel, that kindness is never wasted. That showing up matters. And that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply sing a lullaby to a crying child. Not knowing how that one moment will change the course of multiple lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. In the comments, tell us about a time when a small act of kindness led to something bigger than you imagined. We love hearing your stories.